This is Seymour Rocks reporting from Down Under. I just want to do a little bit of um, a sequel, as it were, to yesterday's video. It seems to have had quite good response, judging by the number of views, but some really unbelievably stupid responses by some people who don't know how to deal with evidence. They wouldn't know evidence if they came across it. So they have to be rude and call people names, etc., which I find pretty disgusting. And also, I'm just flabbergasted by the way in which some people just kind of miss the point and don't even see the most important things that I wanted to express in the video, which is more not about the specific situation, although I've got my views on that, but it's more about the economic collapse brought about by the crumbling of infrastructure, everything in the United States, and Oroville expresses that beautifully. So anyway, I will leave you with my compilation for today. I shall just start off with this from the Oroville Dam Watch group, and they were the group that had a court injunction taken against them, cease and desist. Like many of us, they are monitoring the lake levels, and as you can see from here, the inflow levels exceed the outflow levels by about 900 cubic feet per second. So the inflow levels are 12,500 feet currently, and the outflow levels are 11,600. And the current lake level is just a little bit higher than what it was. It's at 891, so that's about 9 feet off being kind of overflow. And the distance to the emergency spillway is 10 feet, and they put the alert level at yellow. So that's just a little bit of up-to-date information. But really what I wanted to address was that people, I posted this just as an example because Dave Hodges was reporting that they haven't been able to reopen the spillway, and they're doing what I think he called it a workaround. And even though he hasn't come up with the actual documents or anything, it certainly agrees with what most other people are saying. So most of the responses, I've had an overwhelming response to what was just a very modest video. I just wanted to get out my own ideas about things, where I stood, especially on matters concerning infrastructure and economic collapse. But this is from the Oroville Dam Watch group that we just saw before. If it's Dave Hodges, then it's spot on information you can count on. These other people lie to make things fit their agenda. If you're reporting on the Oroville Dam, then you are on the right track. Keep up the good work. So that was very encouraging, coming from that group who are devoting themselves full-time. I'm just a humble person 6,500 miles away. So what are they saying about him? Dave Hodges provides false narratives filled with logical fallacies as he mixes old information with new, provides no source information, documentation, isolates quotes from engineers to support his desired narrative, and good luck with finding current day photos on his website. Well, is he supposed to do anything? He hosts a radio show, doesn't he? Yeah, this looks like the sort of attacks that I've seen on people who have been proven correct and spadefuls, like my friend Guy McPherson, for instance. But here goes another one. Hodges said the spillway is non-operational, but just like you, he has no links or proof of where he gets his information. Well, just about whichever way you look, including photographic evidence of people working on the spillway. Of course, they haven't bloody reopened it. Everyone knows that. So yeah, that's absolutely preposterous. So now that brings me around to Bob B, because he's the elephant in the room. Of all the people that wrote negative comments, they couldn't see Robert B. They didn't notice him. Is that just because he doesn't meet their narrative, or do they just kind of hear what they want to hear and then filter out the rest? Or, and I suspect some are paid trolls. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. So anyway, who is this man? Robert B. He's got quite a pedigree, as it seems. Robert B. has been called the master of disaster. This professor emeritus of civil and environmental engineering studied failure, both engineering and human, in hopes that we can learn from them. Think Deepwater Horizon, Hurricane Katrina, and the Space Shuttle Columbia. At 81, he is retired from teaching, but he remains keyed into current risks. He's been monitoring the fragile 1,100-mile levee system in the California Delta, which funnels drinking water to 25 million Californians, and he has spoken out about the risks of catastrophic failure posed by cracks on the Oroville Dam spillway. B, a member of the National Academy of Engineering, has garnered multiple awards throughout his career in the fields of civil and ocean engineering. His works in helping the people of Louisiana after the 2010 Deepwater Horizon explosion, which spilled more than 210 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, B was recognized by the US Senate. So he's not exactly a nobody. He's not a tinfoil hat. I mean, look at this. This is from the website of Civil and Environmental Engineering at UC Berkeley. So there he is. So not exactly a tinfoil hat. So I'm not surprised that people didn't really want to notice him, because it would confirm what all the conspiracy theorists are saying. So all you people who just, are just idiots, bloody idiots. I mean, listen to this. This is what you chose not to see. You investigated some of the nation's most spectacular disasters, including Hurricane Katrina, Deepwater Horizon, and the Challenger Space Shuttle. How would a major breach at Oroville compare to those incidents? And is such a failure even possible? And he says, yes, it is possible, and it would be far worse than any of them. A breach at Oroville would send a wall of water down the Feather River, through the Sacramento River, and ultimately into the Sacramento San Joaquin, sorry about my pronunciation, Delta. It would destroy towns along the Feather and Sacramento River, flood major portions of Sacramento, and blow out levees throughout the Delta, permanently flooding much of the region. The huge government pumps near Tracy that send water to Southern California cities and farms would be incapacitated. There would be tremendous loss of life and property, and it would be years before a permanent water delivery system to the South State could be re-established. But we don't have that time. Furthermore, it wouldn't necessarily take a tremendous amount of rain and uncontrolled releases, as we saw in February, to trigger such a failure. It could happen on a bright, sunny summer's day. The situation is that serious. So there you are. Get a feast of that. I put it at the beginning of the video so that you can't help but notice. So yeah. And of course, the message in this is if this happens, if there's a dam failure, and it seems from what Bob B is saying that it's fairly inevitable, but if it happens, and I'm not saying it will, certainly not now, but if it happens, then California and the entire United States economy, I would say, would be toast. So I'm not surprised that some of you want to be in abject fucking denial. So this brings me to a quote from someone who I respect a great deal. I won't mention his name because that would be a distraction. People would start sort of going off on little tangents. So I'll just quote it. Too few people give a damn. Most don't have a clue. They prefer ignorance if it comes with a little comfort. Well, that's the sort of comment that I wish that I'd come up with before. Well said. So now that brings me to something that has come out today. This is Scott Cahill. By his own admission, he is not an engineer, but he's been working with dams all his life, and he knows the situation at Oroville very well. And he was interviewed at the end of 2017 after the first incident by Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity, who doesn't bother interviewing people that have no credibility. So that, to me, is an absolute indication. And I'm just going to play the first few minutes of this interview, and I hope that you will you'll go yourself and play the interview. I'll put it in the notes below. So sorry, there's always something that happens. So I'm just going to open this up. Sorry about the delay, folks. You think that you've got everything organized, but you don't. So
well, I did go to the dam. I got a chance to walk it pretty much unimpeded, though observed. I saw what's going on. Of course, I've kept up on the various documents, including a recent document by a Dr. B out of California there. And the gentleman is pretty much in sync with my own thinking. The oddity here, Chris, is that when you and I talked a while back, we had this near tragedy within moments of killing hundreds of thousands of people potentially. And as you say, now everything's okay. And it certainly is not. The fact is that nothing yet is better than it was at that point.
Nothing. Wait, haven't they been pouring concrete and I've saw pictures of fixing?
Yeah, they have spent money. They have poured concrete. They've begun the repairs on the bottom half of the spillway, but the tragedy and loss from the bottom half of the spillway failing has already been realized. No one's worried about the bottom half of the spillway. They've done nothing yet with the upper half of the spillway, which is what would cause a catastrophic failure of the dam. So it's amazing that they've spent this money and their priorities are such that they've not abated the liability at all.
So that's perfect music to finish this off with. So I'm just gonna anyway, yeah. Oh, we should just continue with the Moonlight Sonata. Anyway, so and then his wife has made a report, and I would really recommend. I'm going to finish off with this, and I hope that you will you'll pay close attention to what she has to say. Okay, so. And last but not least, because I I like dealing with facts and not unfounded opinions. Here goes a piece by Lisa Cahill. I think she's the wife of Bob Cahill, on the current situation. This was put up just this morning. So watch this.
Hi everyone. There's a lot of conjecture I've heard about whether Oroville Dam is filled up too much too soon. So I took a look at the data and I took a look at DWR's statements, and I thought it'd be interesting to share that with you. Like I said, a lot of people have a bad feeling. It just seems like this is fuller than it should be. Social media has been rife with concern and rumors for other reasons as well. As you know, this week DWR reached out to the Sheriff's Department and to Assemblyman Gallagher and others with reassurances that all is well. And then those folks subsequently issued statements to the public that all is well. Plus, we have a DWR press release that assures us things are fine as well, and aren't we lucky to have all this water? They plan to go to level 900, only 1 foot below the emergency spillway. That barrage of assurances that all is well concerned me a bit. That was just a bit too many assurances. From state representatives, from the sheriff, mainstream media had several stories, their own press releases, a certain YouTuber. So let's just take a closer look. Assemblyman Gallagher issued a statement that DWR's operation team are not concerned, mainly because most of the snowpack in the Feather River watershed has already run off this far into the year. So I just jumped on the site that's DWR's CDEC with the snow content, and what it shows is that 60% still remains for of the April 1st average, and it's still 133% for normal for this time of year. This thick blue line is the current, with the other two being a couple years previous. So if most is 51%, most is not gone. 60% still remains. So that's a damn lie. Mr. Gallagher also said that he had learned that the current outflow ability of the Hyatt power plant is 13,000 CFS. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting because in looking at the outflow data for the last couple weeks from May 4th till the 18th, it has not been operating at nearly 13,000 CFS until the 17th, yesterday. And then it did. Oh, day before yesterday. And then it did. He also said he had learned that inflows will reduce after the next 5 days, and since that came out, there's at least one more storm forecast for the middle of the week next week, I believe. And that significant investments have been made to improve forecasting. Now, this is a press release from DWR's site published on March 31st, saying that they expected to use the main spillway on April 2nd. At that time, the reservoir was 853 feet, and they expected main spillway releases between 10,000 and 20,000 CFS, with another 10,000 coming from Hyatt, making for a total of 30,000 CFS. But the next sentence is the interesting part for this point. DWR may increase releases to the Feather River again later this week between 40 and 60,000 CFS to prepare for forecasted inflows. So at this time, they were forecasting some increased inflows. And did that happen? Not too much. After that period, again, that was the 31st, so now we're looking for about 2 weeks after that period. And there's only one day where the inflows jumped up to 33,000. Now, it seems to me if they can under forecast inflows, if they think more is coming and it doesn't, then they could also have the situation where they think less is coming, but more shows up. Another thing Assemblyman Gallagher learned is the goal is to fill the lake to an elevation of 900 feet. And the last year the lake was full was in 2011, other than the infamous 2017. So let's just take a look at those two statements. This is a DWR press release from May 16th, last week. And you'll notice in the yellow highlighted portion, they carefully word this statement. It's common for Lake Oroville to stay relatively full during the summer months after an above average water year like the one we're experiencing in 2018-19. In 2010-11, another very wet year, the reservoir was filled to near capacity or capacity for the entire month of July. Okay, let's pick through this. This is a graph of the water years, various water years that you can see listed here. The 2010-2011 one that they specifically mention is this bold black line. And you can see that, as they said, it was indeed at 900 feet or very close to it for the month of July and a portion of June. But you will notice it only got there about the first week in June. This area where we are now, mid-May or so, it was substantially lower, right in here, than now. But we do notice that water year 2011-2012, the bold pink line here, it peaked a little earlier. And actually around May 1st, it was at 900. We're going to look at 13 years of water history, and this is the only time this has occurred. This is a selection of 4 years, and only one of these is applicable. In 1992-93, the level continued to rise until about June 1st, where it peaked. It was less than 900 feet, but it did peak close to full right about the 1st of June. And I just want to point out also that at that time, the dam was only 15 years old. And then this is current from just a couple days ago, well, from yesterday, Saturday. So what's interesting about this is 2016, we've just passed it by. Our current year line has intersected with the 2016 line and surpassed it by, at this time, a little bit. And then you'll notice that the 17 water year when the incident occurred, or 16-17 water year when the incident occurred, and 2016 are both on the graph as well. And this is a little bit closer look of that line crossing. Also, just to make note of it, the 2016 water year was very wet, and you see that toward the end, as we went into 2017, it jumped up. Then we enter to the left of the screen, the magenta line, 2017. And about mid-January, we got a storm with huge inflows, which kicks the line straight up, as you see. They didn't start releasing water right away, at least not in sufficient quantities. Although at that time there was no anomaly in the spillway. It was in playing catch-up for that delay that they had to go to 150,000 CFS. And then there was the issue that we all know very well, of course. This is another water year, or selection of water years. One of the things that's interesting about this is it is from their relicensing. This is what they submitted to FERC as showing typical water management for wet year and dry year. So you will notice here this late May period that we're coming into now, the wettest year, which was for this graph, water year 1995, 96, they are right at about 890 where we are now, right now. They do not approach 900 even in their example wet year, until getting, looks like third week of June or so, getting close to July 1st, right in that area. So that's a little bit different than what we're approaching right now. So just to put all this together on a chart, has the lake been at 900 before June 1st? Once in 13 years, in early May of the 2011-2012 water year. That's not common. Once in 13 years is not common. But let's look again at their very careful wording. It's common for Lake Oroville to stay relatively full during the summer months. Well, that is true. That is their water use pattern. The only one that would make sense for the climatology of the state of California. They did not say it was common for the water level to be so high so early in the year. In 2010-2011, another very wet year, the reservoir was filled to near capacity or capacity for the entire month of July. True, but the month of July is very different climatologically in California than the month of May is. In May, there's still runoff from snowmelt, and there is still some rain falling. So the other question I had was, is it allowed? Are they busting some parameter, or is it permissible? This line that I've highlighted in yellow here shows the area that they have to maintain during the flood season for flood control. And then this line ramps up. They're allowed to keep more and more water up until the maximum, which does occur about May 1st. So yes, it is allowed. It is permitted by the Corps of Engineers plan. But it rains in May. And this graphic shows the average precipitation, and then it also shows by a bar graph here the precip. And you can see readily that May and June have very different expected rainfall rates. And then as in July, it goes to nearly nothing. So when those 900s were being hit in late June or July, you can see here by the precip that's typical how that's a very reasonable occurrence. Is it a reasonable occurrence to be hitting that level in mid to late May? Is it wise in the current conditions? And what are the current conditions? I'll point out in this great photograph, the folks working here at the end of the spillway doing something, and the wet area up here in about the same place that the failure occurred before, it appears. So what we have is a 50-year-old poorly maintained dam with many known deficiencies. And I just made one slide of this. I just grabbed a couple. I think that that's a presentation all by itself that I'll do at some point. But Bob B. said, we certainly respect him very much, very well respected fellow, said there are very serious problems with the head gates. There is a lot of corrosion, and there are large cracks in 2 gate control tendons. Some of the gates don't even open and close all the way. They're like a refrigerator doors that just stay ajar. And that is from July 2017. Then from the DSOD inspection in August 2016, and this is the last DSOD inspection before the incident, they show the flood control structure. They show the crack up here. They say it has extended downward over a long period of time. It will likely stop at this location. If not, conditions should be evaluated. And then additionally, by where the photograph is in the report, it says diagonal track on the left pier for gate 8 appears to have extended to the opposite chamfer below the old telltale paint mark, as evidenced by the length of the recently applied red telltale paint, photograph 14. We have black and white photographs, so we kind of miss out on that. That is before such huge quantities of water were put through there for the February incident timeframe, the January-February incident timeframe in 2017. The main spillway. There is much conjecture, but not too much knowledge about the condition of the main spillway. What we do know is that lifts were photographed in March before the spillway was used, having a look at these gates. Lifts were photographed again after the gates were used, doing the same thing. The crack that they're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, is in the center pier between the two sets of 4 gates. And then another inspection report talks about some problems with gate number 8, which, as you're facing the structure looking upstream, as we are in these photographs, is the far right-hand one. And you see people all over the spillway checking everything, generally focused on cracks and corners. You see water coming out in some various places here that don't appear to be expected. And we don't know. We don't know what's going on. It seems from the amount of scrutiny that something unanticipated may have occurred. I don't know if that were sensor readings that they didn't expect, or if they're seeing some effects on the spillway. There's some water coming out they didn't expect, but it does seem that something unanticipated occurred and that a huge amount of scrutiny is being given to it. Now, there's also a brand new emergency spillway, just finished. In fact, on May 2nd, it looks like they still had some concrete to place here. Why is that important? Concrete is at its least strong the day it's poured. Once it cures the next day, it's at its least strong. It becomes progressively stronger over time. So it would be much better if a year or two went by at the least before the emergency spillway was used. The concrete's very new. And even though, at least on the main spillway, and probably here as well, they used what they call a high early mix, which is concrete that comes up to strength sooner, still the process of concrete is that it cures and becomes harder over time. So this wouldn't be a great time to risk the use of the emergency spillway and perhaps have some damage that wouldn't have occurred a couple years from now. There's also a wet weather year in progress, and the rains are still going. So we're going well into the 3rd week of May with rains. It just appears that there's that wet weather pattern that sometimes happens for you all in California. And we already talked about the snowpack. 60% of it left. That's a lot. So guys, thanks for watching. I leave it to you to draw your own conclusions about whether this is good water management on their part. And stay watchful, stay safe. Thank you.
So last but not least, I just want to give you a sense, just a few words from Bob Cahill. This is actually what integrity looks like for those people that would recognize it. I think some people wouldn't. Anyway, these are my last words.
All right. It's kind of what I do. I can't seem to stop, even though I know better sometimes. And I can't stop from telling the truth. It's something that I truly believe in with all of my soul. I make mistakes, but I will never lie to you. I will never tell you a lie. I may tell you something and it may not be true because I was misinformed or the data that I used to make the determination was wrong. But I will never intentionally lie to you. That is something that I've worked on since I became a man. It's something that I take my greatest pride as a man in.